I still remember that afternoon like it was carved into my bones. The restaurant was one of those upscale American places with soft jazz playing low and sunlight pouring through tall glass windows. White tablecloths, polished silverware, crystal glasses, everything screamed celebration. My fiancé had chosen the place himself, saying it was perfect for a pre-wedding lunch with friends. I wore a simple cream dress, nothing flashy, because I believed love did not need an audience. He wore his confident smile, the one that always made people trust him. Our table was large, surrounded by his friends, coworkers, a few distant relatives. People laughed, toasted, talked about the wedding venue, the guest list, the honeymoon. I sat there smiling, nodding, answering questions while something inside me felt slightly off. He was quieter than usual, checking his phone, tapping his fingers, avoiding my eyes. Then suddenly he stood up. The music felt like it stopped even though it did not. He cleared his throat, lifted his glass, and said he had something important to say. Everyone turned toward him, expecting a romantic speech. I looked up at him with trust still alive in my eyes. That was when he said it. He said the wedding was off. He said he did not love me. He said it clearly, loudly, without hesitation. Loud enough for every table around us to hear. Loud enough to turn a celebration into a courtroom. A few people gasped. Someone dropped a fork. Then his friends started laughing. Not uncomfortable laughter, but cruel laughter. The kind that confirms it was planned. The kind that tells you this humiliation was intentional. My face burned, but I stayed still. I felt every eye on me, watching for tears, for collapse, for begging. I felt his gaze daring me to break. Inside my chest, my heart was pounding, but my mind was strangely calm. He kept talking. He said he realized he deserved better. He said marriage was a mistake. He said I should be grateful he was honest now. Each word was a knife delivered with a smile. I slowly stood up. The chair scraped against the floor, sounding louder than it should have. The laughter faded a little as people noticed I was not crying. I looked at him and smiled. Not a weak smile, but a steady one. I removed the ring from my finger. The ring he made such a show of giving me months ago. The ring everyone had complimented. I placed it gently on the table. I said, I guess this deserves a celebration too. A narrow escape party maybe. Some people laughed again, thinking I was joking. Thinking I was trying to save face. But then I looked at his friends. The same friends who were laughing seconds ago. And I said, I suppose now is the right time to tell everyone why this wedding really had to end. The room went quiet. Even the waiters stopped moving. He froze. For the first time his confidence cracked. Because he knew. And I knew. And whatever I was about to say was not part of his plan. Silence spread across the restaurant like a heavy fog. Every face turned toward me now, not with pity, but with curiosity. He stared at me with a warning in his eyes, a silent command to stop. I ignored it. I took a slow breath. I told them I agreed with him that the wedding had to end. I said some endings are not losses, they are rescues. A few people shifted in their seats, confused. I looked at his closest friend, the one who laughed the loudest. I asked him if he remembered the night he helped my fiancé cover something up. His smile disappeared instantly. Color drained from his face. Then I turned back to the table. I said that when someone tries to destroy you publicly, it usually means they are terrified of what you know privately. That line alone made a few people straighten in their chairs. My fiancé stepped forward, trying to interrupt. He said this was not the time. I smiled again and said this was exactly the time. I told them that 6 months earlier something had felt wrong. Late nights, unexplained trips, phone calls taken in the car. I said I trusted him at first because trust was my weakness. But intuition has a voice, and mine finally spoke louder than love. I said I did not scream or accuse. I listened. I watched. I learned. I told them I found out about the other woman. Not a stranger, but someone connected to his work. Someone who attended our engagement party. Someone sitting at a table only a few feet away right now. A wave of murmurs spread through the room. People turned looking for reactions. A woman near the window suddenly stood up and left. My fiancé lunged toward me, telling me to stop. His hands were shaking. I said she was not the only secret. She was just the easiest one. I explained that while planning our wedding, I handled some of our finances. Not because I did not trust him, but because he insisted. I said numbers tell stories if you know how to listen. I told them about accounts I did not recognize. Transfers that did not match his income. Payments that led to names he never mentioned. He shouted my name. His voice cracked. That was when I knew I had already won. I said I did not confront him because I wanted the truth in full. I wanted to understand the man I almost married. And the truth was bigger than betrayal. It was fear. I looked directly at him. I said he did not end this wedding to free himself. He ended it to silence me. The laughter was gone now. Faces were pale. Some people avoided eye contact. Others leaned in closer. I reached into my bag and placed my phone on the table. I said I came today expecting a celebration. But I prepared for honesty. And then I said, there is one more thing everyone should know before dessert arrives. His knees almost gave out. My phone lay on the table like a quiet witness. No screen lit up yet, but its presence alone shifted the air. People stared at it as if it might speak on its own. I told them the secret was not gossip. It was not jealousy. It was not revenge. It was documentation. I said love makes you blind, but survival makes you sharp. And when I realized my future depended on truth, I became very sharp. I explained that the man standing across from me had built his image carefully. Successful, charming, dependable. But images crack when pressure is applied. I said months ago I was asked to sign some paperwork. Nothing unusual, he said. Just routine. I said I read every page. That was when I noticed names that did not belong. Projects that did not exist. Companies registered under relatives who never worked there. A man at the table whispered fraud. Someone else shook their head slowly. My fiancé tried to grab the phone. I slid it closer to me without breaking eye contact. I said I did not accuse him. I investigated. I talked about late nights spent cross-checking public records. Quiet calls made to offices he thought I would never contact. Emails that came back with polite confirmations and devastating clarity. I said the money he bragged about. The lifestyle. The generosity. It was borrowed from lies stacked on top of lies. I said the wedding was supposed to legitimize him. A respectable wife. A clean future. A distraction. His mother started crying softly. One of his coworkers stood up and stepped away from the table. No one laughed now. I said the other woman knew. She benefited from it. That was why she disappeared so fast. I tapped my phone once. The sound echoed louder than the music. I said I had already shared everything with the right people. Not to destroy him, but to protect myself. He collapsed into his chair. Not dramatically. Just empty. I leaned closer and lowered my voice, but the room still heard. I said you did not end this engagement to break me. You ended it because you were afraid. I picked up the ring again, held it between my fingers, and said this was never a promise. It was leverage. I stood up, adjusted my dress, and thanked everyone for coming. As I walked away, I heard whispers turn into conversations. Shock turning into understanding. Understanding turning into judgment. Behind me, his world was already falling apart. I walked out of the restaurant without rushing. My hands were steady. My heart was quiet in a way I had never felt before. Outside the city, noise felt distant. Cars passed, people laughed, somewhere a door slammed. Life continued even as his carefully built world began to crack behind me. My phone started vibrating before I reached the sidewalk. Messages, calls, notifications stacking on top of each other. Friends asking what just happened. Unknown numbers calling. I did not answer. I got into my car, sat there for a moment, and finally let out a long breath. Not relief, not sadness. Release. That night my doorbell rang twice. Once it was my best friend who hugged me without asking questions. The second time it was a courier delivering legal documents. I smiled when I saw the envelope. I had expected it. By morning the story had already started spreading. Not the dramatic version. The factual one. Emails were being forwarded. Meetings were being canceled. Phones were going unanswered. He tried to call me. Left messages that shifted from anger to apology to panic. He said we needed to talk. He said we could fix this. He said I was overreacting. I never replied. 2 days later I met with a lawyer. Not because I wanted revenge, but because clarity is power in America. And I finally understood that. The lawyer listened quietly, reviewed everything I had gathered, then looked up and said you did the right thing by waiting. I learned that day how close I had been to disaster. Joint accounts, shared liability, future investigations. Marriage would have tied me to everything he hid. I drove home in silence, thinking about how humiliation had been his weapon. But patience had been mine. Meanwhile, his name began disappearing. From company websites, from upcoming projects, from invitations. People who once praised him now avoided him. Not because they believed me blindly, but because documents do not lie. One afternoon, I ran into someone from that lunch. She looked at me differently, with respect. She said she had never seen someone take control like that. That was when it hit me. The lunch was never about ending a wedding. It was about shifting power. He thought public shame would make me small. Instead, it gave me a stage. And somewhere in the city, he was learning what it feels like when laughter turns into silence. Weeks passed. The noise slowly faded. The calls stopped. The messages dried up. And in that quiet, something new began. I returned to routines I had ignored. Morning walks, work meetings, evenings spent cooking for myself. Not to distract, but to rebuild. People still whispered. Some admired. Some questioned. I let them. Their opinions no longer carried weight. One evening, I received an email. Short, direct, no emotion. It was from him. He said he wanted to meet. Not to argue. Not to explain. Just to talk. I agreed. Not out of weakness, but because closure should be chosen, not avoided. We met in a small public cafe. Nothing luxurious. Nothing staged. Just two people across a table. He looked smaller. Not physically, but internally. The confidence gone. The charm stripped away. He said he never meant to hurt me. I let him finish. Then I said intentions do not erase outcomes. He admitted he planned the public breakup. He believed embarrassment would keep me quiet. He underestimated patience. I told him humiliation only works when someone is ashamed. I was never ashamed of the truth. He asked if I hated him. I said no. Hate still gives power. I stood up before he could say more. I said some lessons cost more than money. They cost identity. As I walked away, I felt no victory, just finality. That night I slept deeply. No dreams. No replay. Just rest. The next morning sunlight filled my apartment. And for the first time in months, the future felt open. Unwritten. Mine. Change does not arrive loudly. It slips in quietly when fear leaves. I started saying yes to things I once postponed. A leadership role at work. A speaking event I would have declined before. A solo trip across states, something I had always dreamed of. Each step felt like reclaiming space. Not proving anything. Just existing fully. People began introducing me differently. Not as someone's fiancé, but as someone who stood her ground. I shared my story once at a small event. Not names, not drama. Just lessons. The room listened. Some cried. Some nodded like they recognized themselves. Opportunities followed. Invitations to speak. To consult. To help others untangle themselves from situations they did not choose. Meanwhile, his name continued to fade. Cases do not explode overnight. They unravel slowly. Careers dissolve quietly. Support evaporates. I heard about him only in fragments. A deal that fell through. A move that did not happen. Silence where noise once lived. I felt no satisfaction. Only clarity. One afternoon while walking through a park, I realized I no longer thought about that lunch. The restaurant. The ring. The laughter. They had lost their power. I was no longer reacting. I was creating. I understood then. The secret was never the evidence. It was composure. Power comes from knowing you can walk away without burning down the world. Because sometimes the world burns itself. Time has a way of sealing what courage begins. A year passed. Seasons changed. New routines became normal. Old memories softened into distance. One afternoon, I received an invitation. A professional conference. My name printed clearly, not attached to anyone else. Just mine. As I stood on that stage looking out at strangers, I remembered the lunch. The shock. The silence. The moment he thought he had ended me. I smiled. Not with pride, but with peace. I spoke about choices. About how dignity is not given, it is claimed. About how silence can be strategy and patience can be armor. Afterward, a woman approached me. She said, "I think I am at the table right now, and I do not know what to do." I told her, "You will, when the time is right." That evening, as I walked alone through the city lights, I realized something simple and powerful. He did not break me. He revealed me. The engagement ended, but my life began. And somewhere in the past, a man once believed public laughter could destroy a woman. He was wrong.